What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 571 of AskGSM here today for Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well, especially after last night. But listen, we're not going to talk about that here today. We're going to try to get your mind off of it with some great wrestling questions that you guys sent in from Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So let's get right into it. We got a ton of questions today, so let's not waste any more time. Jordan B. from YouTube, their first question was, many people online say that Triple H is booking the main roster women's division worse than Vince McMahon. What are your thoughts on this? Pretty loaded fucking question to start the show this week. You know, honestly, in some ways, I don't think that is inaccurate. Honestly, I think the women's division now has more talent. It's a more well-rounded roster than we did under Vince McMahon 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. In terms of the television time and the storylines, it's honestly mostly the same. Now, there were obviously peaks and valleys when Vince McMahon was in charge of the women's division. If we're talking 20 years ago when Vince was in charge, no shit, the women's division is in stronger shape now than it was then. But I feel like even under Vince, there were periods in 2016, 2017, and yeah, you can point to the constant Charlotte title reigns and stuff like that, which I don't really think is going to change all that much when Charlotte comes back. We haven't seen that in the last year because Charlotte's been injured. But when she does come back, are we going to see the belt back on her immediately, or are we going to see constant Charlotte title reigns? I don't know. But what I was going to say was, late 2016, when they initially brought back the brand split, specifically on SmackDown, they were doing 3 women's title feuds, or not title feuds, but 3 women's feuds on SmackDown concurrently. They were doing Nikki Bella and Natalya, who were having a fine feud. Actually, well, before that, it was Nikki Bella and Carmella. They were doing that feud. They were doing Alexa Bliss and Becky Lynch over the championship. And I know maybe Naomi. I don't know. There was another one. They were doing 3 feuds at one time. I know Alexa Bliss and Naomi were feuding on and off. The Carmella Nikki Bella storyline was going well. They were having a pretty decent feud, I thought. Natalya was also involved in that after a while. But they didn't really have a very deep women's division at that point, but they were getting a ton of exposure on SmackDown. The storylines meant something. They were entertaining. They were enjoyable. They were meaningful. Not that we don't get that now. I think on SmackDown recently, they were doing the Meechin Chelsea Green secondary storyline. That didn't really start off all that great, or really anything that anyone really cared about, I think. But they had that dumpster match, and that was really, really good. There's really been no follow-up since then. The women's tag team division has been stronger lately, that I don't want to say that would cloud my judgment of how they've handled the women's division for the past 5 years. Under Vince, under Triple H, that really hasn't changed. I mean, the belts have probably been better handled subjectively under Triple H than they were Vince, but that's not really saying much. The belts are meaningless either way. Although they have been, the Fatal 4-Way feud they were doing going into Crown Jewel, I enjoyed actually. I thought that was a good feud, good storyline that spanned across all 3 brands. They had some quality matches, including at the pay-per-view itself. So, that's been better lately. But overall, the women's tag team division really I could do without it. Like we've talked before about, even last week, how I would rather see a mid-card women's title feud in WWE over a tag team women's title feud. But the main women's title programs, they're doing the story. I think there's more long-term storytelling now and long-term story feuds, long-term feuds and whatnot in the women's division compared to a couple of years ago. But in terms of exposure and the opportunities, I don't feel as if there is as many as there was a couple of years ago. And even, after Ronda Rousey left and after she went off to get pregnant in 2019, the women's division dropped off dramatically. It was probably along the same lines of what it is right now. It's probably comparable to that. It might be better, a little bit better now. I'm thinking on Raw right now, we have the Rhea and Liv storyline. That's a long-term story. That's a long-term story. On SmackDown, you have Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax. That's a long-term story. But in terms of the matches that we get and the actual meaningful secondary women's storylines, it's probably the same now as it was a couple of years ago. So This might be a cop-out answer. I don't want to say it's any better or worse. It might be marginally better just in the sense that we're getting better matches. But honestly, even some of the women's matches that we were getting on the main roster in 2016, 2017, with the 4 horsewomen among others, were just as good as some of the matches that we get today. So I don't even really want to say that either. But I feel like it's comparable. The women's division could absolutely be handled better, though. I mean, it could have been handled better under Vince, but it could absolutely be handled better now, especially considering that Triple H at one time boasted the best women's division in all of North America. I can't even say the whole world, like including Japan and stuff. I don't follow those promotions like Stardom and stuff like that. But in the U.S., it was far better than, Ring of Honor, which was essentially non-existent years ago, was their women's division. But like AEW, or AEW wasn't a thing. But WWE did have a better women's division than AEW for a long time. I would say AEW now, honestly, has a better women's division, or at least in terms of some of the stuff they're doing with the women is better than WWE on the whole. NXT has better storylines. I mean, they have better exposure for the women, but some of the storylines are trash. Just some of the creative in NXT is not good with the women, but they get more exposure. So again, it's pros and cons. But like the women's division 5 years ago in NXT was amazing. And now Triple H, he was running it then, he's running it now. And we're not really seeing that same sort of depth. Like Tegan Nox felt like a star in NXT. Yeah, she got hurt a couple of times, but even after she suffered those injuries, she was given opportunities. Triple H brought her back to WWE. We'll talk about the releases later, but Triple H brought Tegan Nox back to WWE. And it wasn't even as if like he used her to get other people over. Like sometimes you bring people back or bring people in to serve as an enhancement talent. That's kind of like what Emma was. Emma was never going to be, when they brought her back, and I like Emma a lot, Tennille Dashwood, whatever, they were never going to put the championship on her. That time passed fucking many years ago. The time to do that would have been when she got called up in like 2014, 2015. She was established as a loser, and it wasn't as if she went out and had this amazing run outside of WWE that would have caused the company to look at her differently. She really didn't. She spent some time in TNA and in Ring of Honor, but it wasn't as if she was ever the Knockouts champion or the women's world champion in Ring of Honor. She was like a secondary player as she was in WWE. Tegan Nox, though, I thought could have been brought back and could have been someone. But they brought her back, did absolutely fuck all with her. Yeah, there were a couple different points where they tried, like late last year, they did the Becky Lynch match, which was really good. I think she faced Lyra Valkyria, I want to say, for the NXT Women's Championship. Maybe not. I think she faced Becky for the NXT Women's Championship. But that was really about it. Like, they told that story with her and Natalya. That wasn't a very interesting story. I wouldn't say they really tried in that respect. Like, she wasn't over for about a month when they were putting her on TV. But no one gets over that quickly, usually. I mean, that's kind of an anomaly. So, I'll talk more about Tegan later, but they didn't really try. Whereas in NXT, they tried to get a lot of people over at one time. Now, he wasn't batting 100 in NXT with Triple H. There were a lot of women that they brought in that they did nothing with. Deonna Purrazzo, Santana Garrett, among others. They had a loaded women's division at that point, and those women were featured on TV sometimes, but typically in an enhancement role, and weren't really put over as anything special. So again, in NXT, it's easier because you have a smaller division, and on Raw and SmackDown, you have two different women's divisions, and you have to deal with a whole litany of issues when it comes to sponsorships and commercials and other bullshit like that. I totally get it, and they also have to share the screen time with the other men on the roster, and they have far more men on the main roster than they do women. In NXT, it feels like it's more comparable in terms of the men and women that they have there. But long-ass answer just to say, I think it's pretty even. I don't really think the women's division is in a far better shape. Like, what period are we talking about here? Like, with Vince McMahon, that's the problem. You know what I mean? Like, generally speaking, it's not as if the women's division is in an astronomically better place under Vince. I think Triple H does value the women more than Vince did. Vince had to get to the point where he was featuring those women on the main roster and giving them Royal Rumble matches and Money in the Bank matches and stuff like that. He had to do that kicking and screaming because people were like demanding something happen with them for the longest time. And it took people fucking complaining online for the longest time for Vince to finally do something with them, put them in the main event of WrestleMania, give them more opportunities. Triple H, I feel like, is a bit more open-minded, but he's still a bit more ignorant as far as giving them storylines that mean something. There's still a lot of improvement there, in my opinion. Jordan's second question, what Samoa Joe matches do you wish we could have gotten in WWE? I wish we could have seen Samoa Joe against John Cena, Randy Orton, Sheamus, Braun Strowman, and Gunther. I agree with all of those. I feel like any of those matches would have been great. I mean, the one that always bothered me that we did not get was Cena and Joe. I mean, for a long time, that was a dream match. I think they trained in the same place many, 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 many years ago. So there was history there. The closest that we came to that match was when Cena jumped over from SmackDown to Raw right after SummerSlam 2017 so he could feud with Roman Reigns, and that was right before Cena took time off. And that was kind of like the end of John Cena as a full-time performer. And he came back as a full-timer like about a year ago to SmackDown, but he wasn't wrestling on TV. Like the last time he wrestled consistently on TV was in the summer of 2017 when he came back that summer and he wrapped up in that feud with Roman Reigns that fall, and then he left. And then after that, he's been pretty much a part-timer. But they could have done it then. We instead got Cena and Roman Reigns, and had Cena stuck around, maybe we would have gotten Cena and Joe. But Cena and Joe were involved in a segment quickly on Raw that night, and they faced off in a tag team match, so we did get physical interaction between the two. But it never really went anywhere. So that was one match I was really hoping that we would get specifically at a WrestleMania. We never did. Whether it be a WrestleMania 33 or 34, they just went in a different direction. They didn't do it. Whatever. The other matches would have been great too. Joe and Gunther. I think Joe, even today, but especially 5-10 years ago against Gunther of today, even 5 years ago, would have been fucking awesome. I would think those were the biggest ones. But on the bright side, we could say, oh, we wish we got those matches. And on the bright side, we did get Joe against a lot of great people. It wasn't as if his run was solely relegated to NXT. Like he was just in NXT, he never got the call up, and then he left. Like Adam Cole, for example. He is someone where I feel like there's a lot more what ifs. Like we did get the couple of one-offs with Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins on the main roster during the build to Survivor Series 2019, 5 years ago. But he was a guy that never spent any time on the main roster beyond the build for Survivor Series 2019. So we never really got to see those big-time matchups. With Joe, he was on the main roster for quite a while. He got called up in 2017, got fired in 2021, right? Brought back to NXT soon after. So he was on the main roster for a couple of years. Full-time, no, because he kept getting hurt. They put him on commentary at one point. But in that time, though, we did get Joe and Brock, which was great. For as short-lived as it was, that was a great feud. That was a great match. We got Joe and Roman Reigns a bunch. Some of their matches weren't great, but a majority of them were really fun. They worked well together, I thought. We got Joe and Seth Rollins quite a few times. We got Samoa Joe and AJ Styles. That was one match that I really wanted to see, and we did get that match quite a few times, actually, over the summer of 2018. We got Joe and Jeff Hardy, who worked well together. They probably did that match in TNA at one point, but they got to run it back in WWE, and that was great. So I'm glad specifically that we got the Joe and Brock match and the Joe and Styles matches. But of the matches that we did not get, Joe and Cena, Joe and Orton lead that list. I totally agree. Chris W. from YouTube, he says, "Hi Grim, hope all is well and hope you had a great Halloween. I did watch both Halloween Town 1 and 2, handed out candy to the neighborhood kids, and ate a delicious Halloween dinner of the Wednesday Whopper and fries. It's basically a regular Whopper with extra mayonnaise and purple buns. My birthday Sunday was also excellent, and I'm happy to turn 34. Before I go forward with this question, Chris, happy belated birthday. I know I wished you happy early birthday last week. I know it was your birthday on Sunday. I was going to wish you happy birthday through Facebook or whatever that day. I was actually out all day at Rhode Island Comic-Con, and I was thinking about it going into Sunday because I knew someone whose birthday it was on Saturday, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's their birthday Saturday, it's Chris's birthday Sunday, and I'm going to wish him a happy birthday. But it was so chaotic, just a chaotic weekend in general. It usually is, but and I was also out all day on Sunday, so I totally forgot, wasn't really on my phone. So I apologize for not wishing you a happy birthday on the day itself, Chris, but I hope you had a great day. Halloween Town 1 and 2, fucking classics. Did not have a chance to watch those this year, but those are my two favorite kids' Halloween movies that I grew up on Disney Channel, as you did, I'm sure, and glad you got to watch them, and had a fun day, both on Halloween and on your birthday. Your first question was, although they have only been in AEW for a little less than 2 months, the Hurt Syndicate has been making a name for themselves on the roster, with Shelton putting on, from what I've heard, strong outings for a guy near 50. You mentioned on Twitter that it's the best thing going in AEW right now, so I ask, what are they doing right that the BCC, what are they doing right? What are they doing right that the BCC and the Elite could not do when they are top heels? That's a good question. So the Elite thing they tried with, and I gave that a chance. It didn't really overly interest me. I just feel like with the Elite, we've seen them in a top spot before. It's been there, done that. So when they did that again, like including as heels a couple of years ago when Kenny Omega was champion. So I know it was a different take on it earlier this year when they put the Bucks together with Okada and Jack Perry. It's a different Elite, I get it. But it was an inferior Elite because it just kind of felt like a fucking mishmash of people. And I know Okada has history with the Bucks, and the only reason Jack Perry is with them is because of the Punk stuff. If that Jack Perry Punk brawl-in shit didn't happen last year, there is zero chance that Jack Perry would be with the Elite right now or would have been paired with them a couple of months ago. He might still be getting a push. I like Jack Perry, but the whole Elite thing to me, like they've created a fine chemistry together, but it never really overly interested me, but I was willing to see where it went. They attacked Tony Khan, they had that big moment, and then failed to follow up on it. Yeah, they were all champions. I think they are still. Actually, the Bucks lost their belts last week. They're no longer the tag team champions. But they were all champions for like a good 4 or 5 month period. But Okada doesn't really defend his title consistently. Neither does Jack Perry. They've done more title defenses lately, but like for a couple months stretch there, they were not defending those belts. So what's the point of being champions if you're not defending the fucking titles? The Bucks went like months without defending those tag team titles. They had better matches recently and did defend them more consistently recently. But thank God they lost them. I think Private Party were the right people to beat them for those belts. But anyway, the angle just was never really interesting. A lot of it felt forced and tongue-in-cheek, like, oh yeah, like we're the ones that you don't like about this company. Like they were trying too hard. It just felt disingenuous, which might have been the point. It's like the Jericho thing. It's like a nudge, like the hardcore fans aren't going to like this, but they appeal to one audience. That's the problem. A majority of what Tony Khan does on these shows appeals to one audience. And if you don't really get the ins and outs of it, you don't really give a fuck. Like my friends who we actually went to Rhode Island Comic Con with on Sunday, they don't watch AEW. And if they did, they probably would not give a fuck about the Elite or what the Bucks are doing and whatever because they don't get the whole ins and outs of the Punk stuff. They don't even really know what happened there. They wouldn't really find it entertaining or really worth booing as heels or whatever. They probably wouldn't give a shit. The BCC is a better angle. That's another one I'm willing to kind of give more of a chance to. What we've seen from them so far, I know they were top heels in the show about a year ago, but now they've been top heels for about a month or two since the whole all-in angle with, or all-out angle rather, with Moxley and company attacking Bryan Danielson, then retiring him from full-time active competition at Wrestle Dream. And they've just really been attacking fucking losers so far. Nothing but undercarders. I don't give a shit. Not every faction has to go after main event baby faces right out of the gate. I get it, right off the bat. But, you know, there needs to be more meat on the bone there. I like a lot of those guys in the BCC or whatever they're calling themselves now. I know Moxley had trademarked the name Death Riders or whatever. But at the same time, it's like they're not really saying anything interesting. They want to take over AEW. Why? And maybe they'll get to that at some point. And I'm a big, like, give it time, they'll explain it in time type of person with both companies and any company really. But it's been months now. It's been 2 months. And he's still speaking cryptically as John Moxley. And is there a higher power? Is there not? Do not get Shane McMahon involved. I've said that before. Fuck no to that. I don't give a shit about Shane McMahon being in AEW. No fucking thanks. But if that's not where they're going with it and there's no higher power, then why are they taking over AEW? I just feel like they're doing this without a real endgame in mind. I do think there is someone in mind that will take that title from Moxley, which I'll get to later because someone else asked about it. But like the group itself, they're a great like group of competitors. But like why they're doing what they're doing, and like Wheeler Yuta feeling bad for Bryan and then turning on him anyway, like none of that has really been explained so far. So there's really nothing to sink my teeth into. With the Hurt Business stuff, AEW has the benefit of that already being an established group. If this was a brand new group, then maybe I would be more skeptical. I mean, the BCC and Elite have been around for a long time now. But the Hurt Syndicate, the Hurt Business, whatever you want to call them, were a successful group in WWE that did not get more of a chance to be something more or longer than they were. Now, like you said, Shelton's almost 50. So the big criticism of the Hurt Business and whatnot is that long term, for now it's great. Like for now it's cool, you got Bobby in there, Shelton, MVP all back together. It was something that worked in WWE that Vince McMahon pulled the plug on. And Triple H is also to blame because he didn't put them back together when he had every reason to, and Cedric was there and They had teased it. They did not go full throttle with it. They put Bobby with the Profits instead. I mean, and that was a fine pairing. I was excited about that, but they could have easily just reunited the BCC instead. Or not the BCC, I'm sorry, the Hurt Business, wrong group. And I get it, the Profits are younger, but it wasn't even as if it didn't really feel like they were together to elevate Montez Ford. Didn't really elevate anyone. The Profits are worse off than they were a year ago. Bobby's gone from the company. B-Fab's in the group. I guess she benefited. Otherwise she'd probably be fired right now. But like, the Hurt Business was a great group, and you had Cedric in there. You could have made a star out of him if he eventually turned on them or whatever. They never really got to that point because they split up the group way too soon. Long-term at AEW, they got to use that group to get other people over, whether they're putting over another group or they put in some young guys, which I hope that they will in due time, and they benefit from being aligned with these 3 stars, previously established superstars in WWE, but they're also just fucking cool. Like the Elite, the Bullet Club felt cool a very long time ago. It's been a very long time since the Bucks felt cool in AEW. If they were ever really cool in their own company. I mean, they were cool in New Japan and AEW. I never really got that vibe. The BCC currently, to me, don't feel cool. Now, I know not every heel group is going to be cool. I get it. But like, they feel like the hot thing. The Hurt Syndicate, they're fucking badass individuals. They were well protected in WWE for a time, and then they weren't. But in AEW, they have a chance to start over. And I think Shelton, like you said, and it's not just the fact they were a great group in WWE. Let's see how it goes in AEW. MVP has a lot more to offer as a manager. He's a great fucking manager. He can talk. Don't really need to see him in the ring at this point. I mean, I wouldn't complain, but it's not really necessary. But he's a great fucking talker. Shelton Benjamin he was never going to be WWE champion in WWE at this point, but like, they could have put him in the ring more, having matches that we've seen recently on Dynamite. We could have seen that in WWE. Then again, WWE's roster is so deep, I kind of get why we didn't for a long time. But like, this is the guy that wasn't allowed to have those matches for the longest time in WWE for whatever reason. And so far in AEW, he's had 3 great fucking matches with Lio Rush, Sammy Guevara, and Swerve Strickland, proving that he can very much still go. Fucking Shelton Benjamin is awesome. And we know Bobby Lashley can still go. So this Hurt Business thing has me excited. So I'm excited for all 3 guys to get into their opportunity to kind of make up for what we didn't really see finished in WWE. And hopefully the BCC Elite stuff improves. The Elite shit I just don't give a fuck about. The BCC still has a chance to be something. So far, it's not to me. And it really hasn't caught on. I don't really give a fuck about them attacking in the Dark Order and Top Flight. Who gives a shit? But the Hurt Business, again, right out of the gate, feuding with a top star in Swerve Strickland. And you can complain, Swerve should not be losing to Bobby Lashley. Or Bobby Lashley should not be losing to Swerve. I get that. We'll cross that bridge when we get to their first match, probably at Full Gear. But the idea that they're coming in and feuding with a top star out of the gate, and they should have really good chemistry. MVP's already been entertaining in his role. Shelton's already been killing it. Bobby just showed up, but he's an established star. I'm excited, so we'll see where it goes. Your second question, what are your thoughts on Crown Jewel from last Saturday? I don't watch these events, but I read about them, and from what I've read, it was a very basic, boring house show masquerading as a pay-per-view/PLE. I also heard the Nia Jax-Liv Morgan match was bad, and the Bloodline versus OG Bloodline was good but went on too long. In your opinion, how was the show? I don't really think you said anything inaccurate there, to be honest with you. I didn't think it was a bad show. I thought it was a fine show. WWE, especially under Triple H, has put on some really great pay-per-views. And I feel like the pay-per-views have felt a lot bigger. They feel more worthwhile. And the big matches on those shows typically deliver. Even if the undercard is kind of forgettable, the big matches, the big main events tend to deliver. I kind of feel like that was the case with this show. I really enjoyed Gunther and Cody Rhodes. I love the United States Championship triple threat. That was my favorite match in the whole show. I think Bronson Reed and Seth Rollins had a great match. They did that angle with Owens and Orton, which I appreciated, over doing an actual match. I like that. The women's tag team title match was good. So it wasn't a bad show. Was it uneventful? Yes. I'm trying to think, did any championships change hands? I don't think so. Nothing really major happened. So, again, it was one of those shows where it was fine if you watched it, fine if you didn't. I thought it was a good show. I mean, the biggest thing that happened on the show was the Bloodline stuff at the beginning, with Sami Zayn coming out, Solo pinning Roman Reigns, all that shit. The storyline stuff in that match was well done. The actual match dragged for a while, but it was a good match, like you said. So, it was one of the weaker pay-per-views, but I feel like that's a testament to how good some of the other pay-per-views WWE has done this year have been. So it wasn't like the best pay-per-view. It wasn't, I don't know if it was, it might have been the worst. I don't know, but that's not because it was a bad show. It was more so just because it was kind of uneventful. And it wasn't it's not a Saudi thing either. Like, if you don't want to watch it because it's a Saudi show, I get it. But it's not like, oh, all the Saudi shows are a waste of time. That's not even really necessarily true. WWE's had some great fucking crown jewel shows in recent years, in the last 2 years, including in the spring as well with King and Queen of the Ring and Night of Champions. Those have been some really, really good shows. This was one of the weaker ones, but it wasn't a terrible show. It was kind of along the same lines as King and Queen of the Ring from earlier this year. And that wasn't really that overly memorable show either. It was a fine show. It wasn't a great show. And it was, again, fine if you watched it, fine if you didn't. This was kind of along the same lines, in my opinion. Brandon A., he's back here on YouTube. He says, "What's up, GSM? Hope you're doing well as usual. It was great to be able to finally meet you and the others during SummerSlam weekend. I've been meaning to send in questions, but I'm always a few weeks behind on the show, and I always think I'll send in a question you already answered in a recent show. To prevent that, I'll bring up something that is not related to anything recent." He says, "WrestleMania 34 was largely seen as a bad show, even though it had several highlights. Do you think it would have been a great show if you changed these things? A. Have Asuka win against Charlotte. B. Have Rusev win the U.S. title instead of Jinder. C. Have Shinsuke turn heel with the low blow during the match instead of after and win the WWE Championship. D. Shave 5 minutes off of the main event and give that to Cena Taker. Also have Roman win against Brock. Assume the matches themselves basically stayed the same. For example, in this scenario, you can't fantasy book AJ and Shinsuke to have a better match. The only difference from the matches, again, would be the length of time for the Undertaker match and the main event. The only other thing I would propose is that you switch the mixed tag team match and put that in the spot that the Daniel Bryan match happened and vice versa. That was the Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon versus Owens and Zayn tag team match he's talking about. That way, the Daniel Bryan match happens earlier in the show and the crowd is still up for it, and just trust that the mixed tag will still deliver later on. Do you think these changes make WrestleMania 34 much better, marginally better, or an all-timer? Take care." A lot to dissect here. First of all, Brandon, thank you for the question. Great to hear from you again. I have not heard from Brandon since I saw him at SummerSlam 3 months ago, so I was kind of worried I scared him off. But Brandon, I appreciate you tuning in and sending in quality questions like everyone else. So, and not to just to single out Brandon, you all send in great questions, but I just want to welcome back Brandon because I thought I scared him off in I was going to say Detroit. Where the fuck was SummerSlam this year? Cleveland. That's where I saw him. So, thank you for the question. It's a very good question. So, like I said, a lot to dissect here. It would have been a much better show. Would have been an all-timer? I don't know about that. But like everything you said, I agree with. Asuka should have beaten Charlotte. Rusev should have won the U.S. title. Jinder winning it was fucking stupid. And honestly, even like the opening hour or so of WrestleMania, I don't know what I've said in the past. I've said the WrestleMania 34 main event sucked. The WrestleMania 34 event itself, I don't think it was bad. I think it was better than 32. I think it was better than 29-27. I think it was a mediocre show. But the first hour or so, up until the mixed tag team match, was fucking great. So that opener, which you didn't even mention because it should be left as is, the triple threat for the Intercontinental title was fucking awesome. That was a great match with Miz, Rollins, and Finn Balor. And Rollins winning the belt. The mixed tag team match was great. So the first hour or so was great. And then from there, it kind of slowly went downward where AJ and Nakamura had a disappointing match. Kind of felt like they were holding out for more matches, which they were. We found that out. I would have just had Shinsuke win clean and not turn him heel. That's what I would have done. Shinsuke was so over. Why would you? I don't even really understand the idea to turn him heel anyway. Just so you can continue the feud between the two. And he never even ended up beating AJ to win the belt. So it was a whole waste of, and not that a waste of time. I mean, it kept AJ strong as champion. But that kind of eliminated and immediately erased any notion that Shinsuke could be a main eventer in WWE. He lost every fucking title match. He failed to win that belt 3 or 4 times. It was pretty embarrassing. But they had some quality matches, and the matches got better as they progressed. The Roman Brock match was bad. I mean, you said take 5 minutes off of that match and give it to the Taker match. I do think Cena and Taker could have had a fun 5-minute match. Because Taker even said in his Last Ride documentary that he was training like hell for that match. He looked like he was in great shape. I remember after that match happened, people were like, oh my God, Taker looked amazing. Yeah, he did, but it was also a fucking 2-minute match. Would the match have been great if it was a full-length match? We don't know. Because Cena was also kind of past his prime at that point. It wasn't like even 2016 Cena, it was 2018 Cena. And in 2018, Cena had like the match. I mean, he was having good matches at that point, but it was not 2015, 2016, even 2017 Cena. So I'm not even really sure the match would have been all that amazing. But the 2-minute squash was like, okay, like, why? Like, it could have been longer. I understood what they were going for, but given the shape that Taker was in, it probably could have gone longer. The Roman Brock match was not good. It wasn't, especially compared to the 31 match. Of all the 3 Mania matches they've had, that was easily the weakest. Like, it's not even close. I even thought the 38 match was better than the 34 one, just in my opinion. So, I mean, and you said, oh, have Roman win instead of Brock. Honestly, I thought Brock winning was better because everyone expected Roman to win. Now, it did delay the inevitable with Roman beating Brock at SummerSlam instead of at WrestleMania. It's like, then at that point, just rip the fucking Band-Aid off. But Roman was, not that he wasn't over, but no one wanted to see him in that role. It was tiresome. They should have given the belt to like Joe instead or someone like that. Bobby had arrived that year, build the Bobby and Brock, which they did years later, but they could have done it in 2018 too, and they didn't. So I would have kept the belt on Brock. That's fine. But the match itself was not good. So that's why I think, and a lot of people remember Manias for the main events. So you said, even if you shaved off 5 minutes, I still don't think it would have been that much better of a match. It wasn't as if they had this great match that went on for too long. Like we mentioned in the previous question, like the OG Bloodline versus the new Bloodline was a good match, but too long. That could have been a bit better if it was slightly shorter. I don't think Roman and Brock would have been all that much better. They just don't have that great. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say they don't have great chemistry. But their matches are so hit or miss. Like the 31 match was great, but it was also because of the circumstances. There were no circumstances at SummerSlam 2022. They had a great fucking match on that show. So I don't know. But that main event was probably going to be poopy no matter what. It was going to be a lousy main event. But everything else that you mentioned, like, also AJ and Nakamura weren't going to have a better match, like you said. I mean, you could have changed the outcome, and that would have made it slightly better. But the match itself would not have been the instant classic that people were hoping for. So I can't say it would have been the best show or an all-timer if the 2 top title matches were kind of dull. Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax, like, it was a fine match. Nia won as she should have, but it was like, I don't really care about this. The undercard was great, though. I feel like the undercard, even with the slight changes that you mentioned, could have been better. So I'll say it would have been significantly better. Maybe better than marginally better, but not like dramatically better, if that makes sense. Because the top matches still would have been fucking dull. Cena and Taker would have been short-lived, and the 2 top title matches would have been like, eh. And it was also a long fucking show. Like, the shows that go on for 4 or 5 hours for the main card, it's tough to justify that. You know, especially when you end on a sour note and the matches and the match isn't all that good. So I would say it would be, I'll go marginally better, but it would have made the show, it would have improved it significantly, but maybe not much better. I don't know. It's kind of hard to classify, but it was not a terrible show. There were definitely worse WrestleManias than that one. No L from Facebook. Their first question was, thoughts on the 3 recent releases, and do you think they will bounce back from it? That being Tegan Nox, Indy Hartwell, and Baron Corbin. I was disappointed in all 3 releases. And again, not every, and I get these comments sometimes like, oh, not every person is underutilized. Like, no fucking shit. I was not crying over, I'm not crying over any of these releases. But like, I'm not sitting there saying, oh, Jinder could have been so much more. Jinder got cut this year. And I'm not celebrating anyone getting fired or anything, but like, that was one that I saw and I'm like, I'm surprised that it did not happen sooner. There were other people like that too, like Indushare, they could have used better. That was disappointing, but it's not like they lost out on 2 massive stars. They could have. I think those 2 guys had potential, and that was disappointing, but it wasn't like this massive loss of talent. And I'm not even saying like they lost their next John Cena and Corbin, Tegan, and Indy. I mean, this is not late 2021 where it was like Keith Lee and, Kieran Cross, say what you will, but they didn't even give the guy a chance. Before they fired him in 2021, they didn't even give the guy a chance. Swerve, Keith Lee specifically, guys like that, they didn't even fucking try. In the case of like Hit Row, they were on the main roster for literally a month. Then what's the fucking point of calling them up if you're going to fire them anyway? That was wild to me. That was just egregious. These people have been here for a long time. And I won't go in depth with all 3 of them. I'll talk more about it tomorrow on WrestleRain Radio with RJ. But the Tegan one might have been the most disappointing because they never really tried with her on the main roster. I know she's injury prone. I know that was always a giant asterisk. Oh, that's all I hear. Oh, she's injury prone. Oh, she's injury prone. Well, guess what? She had all 3 of those injuries, 4 of those injuries, before they brought her back in 2022. They brought her back in 2022. What was the point? Like I said earlier, it's not even like they used her to put other people over. She was never even really on the show. SmackDown, Raw, it didn't matter. She was on Raw more often than she was SmackDown. But when she got drafted to Raw last year, she was barely on Raw for a long time. And then they put her on the show for a few months. Didn't really try with her beyond the quick Becky feud. She was teaming with Natalya, and that's not going to get anyone over. Because Natalya, yeah, she's established, but no one gives a shit about the tag team division. They didn't even really try. And then she got moved to SmackDown, never made a single appearance. So that one was the most disappointing to me, because it's like you already had the chance to bring her back, and you did nothing then with her either. So what was the point? To me, the company failed her in that respect. Yes, she is injury prone, but it wasn't as if they had her at a certain level, and they didn't want to put the title on her because she could suffer an injury at any point. She was never even really on the show. So that's a WWE fumble, in my opinion. The Indie one, I mean, I'm biased because Indies, I've known her for a very long time, well before she even got into WWE, even before she got into wrestling, actually. We've been friendly through Twitter for well over a decade now. She was another one where, I mean, she only got called up a year ago. She was never going to be like the focal point of that division. But like, I feel like she could fill a similar role to Michin, Chelsea Green. She's entertaining. She's very funny. I think she worked well with Candice, and they were getting more TV time lately. They just reappeared on TV, and then she got fucking fired out of nowhere. So that was really disappointing. I feel bad for her. I think both her and Tegan could do well for themselves in like a TNA or something like that. In AEW, like I know Toni Storm said at one point she would love to see Tegan Nox in AEW. AEW didn't pick her up the last time. They could pick her up this time, but it's like they already have so many women that we already don't see on the regular. Like Deonna Purrazzo basically fell off of the fucking earth there. We haven't seen her on Dynamite in months. So I'm not even convinced that she would do much better over there. Baron Corbin's, I mean, you could spend a whole video talking about where they went wrong with him. Again, he wasn't a guy that was going to be like the next world champion. But I mean, honestly, though, he could have been. In 2017, when he won Money in the Bank, he had momentum. And it wasn't even as if they gave him the chance to reign as champion. It's not like they did the Jinder experiment with him, and then it sucked, and they never pushed him again. That happened with Jinder. Jinder should have never been in that spot anyway. Baron Corbin, I think, had more potential to do better in that spot than Jinder. Just my opinion. But I know he didn't appeal to a certain demographic in WWE's eyes, and that's probably, I mean, among other reasons why they didn't go forward with it compared to Jinder. But Baron, like, when they first called him up, he had a great thing going in 2016. He had a very good NXT run. They could have built him up as, like, this monster heel. The Money in the Bank cash-in, he never really recovered from. The failed cash-in, like, he won Money in the Bank, and it was really cool to see that, and he reigned supreme, the main event of that Money in the Bank pay-per-view in 2017. And then he cashed in and lost like a fucking bum. And even the way that it happened, he looked like a loser. Cena cost him the cash-in, and then he lost the Cena decisively in what was basically a squash at SummerSlam. And I think at the time there was heat on Baron Corbin for a comment he made about Cena or whatever it was. I don't remember. But that might have had something to do with it. They put him back in the mid-card, and he did well on the mid-card. He had that U.S. title run. I thought that was the perfect spot for him. 2018 comes around, and they make him a fucking authority figure. And it never really felt like they figured out what to do with him after that. The Constable stuff sucked. Early on, it was okay. As it progressed in 2018, the creative in WWE was so fucking bad, it reflected on Corbin because he was overexposed. 2019, overexposed. The King of the Ring stuff, he had a great run in that King of the Ring tournament. Great matches. The booking after that fucking was awful. Like, he took the King gimmick and ran with it and blah, 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 blah. That was awful, too. The bum-ass shit was entertaining, but it was short-lived. Happy Corbin sucked. It was better than the King shit. It was a nice change of pace, but it still ultimately sucked. The JBL pairing I was looking forward to, that also went nowhere. And the best thing that he's done in the last number of years was in NXT. That's the most disappointing thing. Like, if they fired him a year and a half ago after the Happy Corbin shit, it probably would have made more sense. Like, I even wrote an article at that point, like, people that should be worried for their jobs in this company that Triple H clearly is not, in favor of, even though Baron Corbin was in NXT and featured pretty well over there. I figured that he saw Baron Corbin as damaged goods, because that whole JBL thing happened under his watch. I know Vince came back, but it wasn't like he was pushing Baron Corbin any real meaningful degree. That character was awful. And if they fired him then, I wouldn't have been happy about it, but I would have been like, okay, I kind of get it. They're not doing shit with him. They haven't done shit with him in a long time. But then they put him back in NXT. He reinvents himself, has a great run, a great second run in NXT, and they call him back up to do nothing. It's like the Dijak thing. At least unlike Dijak, he made more appearances on the main roster in recent months than Dijak they called up and literally fired immediately, like within a month. That was fucking stupid. They didn't fire technically their contract. His contract ran out, but still. They didn't even fucking try with that guy. With Corbin, they didn't even really try either, but at least he was on the show a little bit. And again, I think the babyface thing had legs and people started to like Corbin and whatnot. They paired him with Apollo Crews, and that went nowhere. And then they got rid of him. So, again, I'll go into more depth tomorrow, but I feel like you could have tried more with a guy like him. And again, these losses will not affect WWE. Because I hate people when they talk about, like, oh, like, you talk about these people like they could have been the next big thing. They were not going to be. I mean, I like Indy a lot. Tegan Knox, I think, is really talented. Baron Corbin, I think, is very underrated. None of these guys were going to be future world champions, but at the same time, like, these losses happen, these departures happen, and the roster's still perfectly in shape. Like, they got rid of Cameron Grimes, among other people, earlier this year. That was disappointing. The main roster hasn't lost a beat, hasn't missed a beat or whatever. I think they'll be fine regardless of where they go. But it is disappointing they did not do more with these people. I think that's the bottom line there. No L's second question. What would be your top 5 Survivor Series elimination tag team matches of all time? I'm sure I've answered this before. And the answer constantly changes too, because there's been so many good ones over the years. If you're talking like favorite ones, the best ones is, I mean, I've answered that one before too, and that is a bit more difficult because it's kind of hard to remember all the great elimination matches. Like, some of the best ones would include like Team WWF versus the Alliance in 01. Like the 80s ones and the 90s ones don't really stand out to me as much. There are some fun ones there, and there's probably some that you can include. But like the best ones include like the 01 one, maybe 05. But for my favorite personally, I'll include one where I was not watching at that point, but I've gone back and watched it, and it's a great fucking match. Team Austin and Team Bischoff from 03. Great match. That would probably be my favorite Survivor Series elimination match, where it was from a period where I was not watching WWE. So I would put that one on there. Team Raw, Team SmackDown, Team NXT from 2019. The men's one. The men's elimination match that year was great. That whole pay-per-view was a lot of fun in Chicago. With NXT's involvement, that made that brand supremacy gimmick a whole lot more tolerable that year. And NXT won too, which was cool, but that match was great. Team Orton and Team Barrett from 2011, I've always been partial to. I thought that was a really fun match. Barrett going over was fun too. Didn't really overly elevate him in the long term, but it was a great, nice endorsement of him for a night. So I enjoyed that match. Back to the Raw and SmackDown stuff, 2016. I thought that first brand supremacy men's elimination match was awesome. Team Raw, Team SmackDown was great. And then easily my favorite, I'm not even really sure there's a close second, Team Cena, Team Authority, Survivor Series 2014. The layout of that match, the build for that match, the aftermath sucked. I mean, they failed to follow up on it, but the Ziggler moment, the Sting debut, everything about it was just great. Hot crowd, the stakes, main event of the show. Easily my favorite Survivor Series elimination match that I like to go back and watch once in a while. It was just a really, really good match, so that would be my favorite. But the other ones stand out as well among my top 5. Christopher L. from Facebook, first question was, Survivor Series is right around the corner, and as tradition, WWE will team 4 combatants for 2 separate teams for both the male and the females. 2-part question. What is a fantasy match between 4 stars of the past versus 4 stars of the present for both the men and the women? And what are your top 5 favorite Survivor Series pay-per-view shows? The first one, I've answered this a lot over the years, and my answer always changes because I honestly forget. But I think I've said before, 4 stars of the past versus 4 stars of the present. I think I've done like Paul Heyman guys. Punk is technically present, so I'll probably change this answer. But I've said like Punk, Brock, Roman, and maybe Rob Van Dam or something. Maybe Kurt Angle, but probably Rob Van Dam. Like the 4 biggest Paul Heyman guys versus, I don't even know. I don't even know who I would have said, but maybe Stone Cold Steve Austin, actually, because he was technically a Paul Heyman guy in ECW, so I would probably replace RVD with him. But again, Punk is present, so I would have to change that answer. But like stars of today, I would probably, like, if it was WWE specifically, it would be, it would probably be Punk, Roman, Rollins, and Rhodes. And if we were to pick 4 stars from the past, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Cena, because he's technically past, let's face it. I know he hasn't retired yet, but Cena's the past at this point. So Cena, Rock, Austin, and because I feel like Cena and Rhodes kind of counteract each other. Punk is for Stone Cold, Rock is for Roman, and who was the other person? Seth Rollins, I said? Maybe Macho Man? I mean, I know that's like a different generation, but I mean, Hogan, I feel like it would be an obvious one. Like the 4 Mount Rushmore of the past versus the Mount Rushmore of today. I feel like that would be a good justification for that. But I also feel like Rollins and Macho Man are more comparable in terms of being good workers and just the charisma there and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go Macho Man. So Macho Man, Austin, Rock, and Macho Man, and who was the other person I said? On the present team, it's Punk, Rhodes, Roman, and Rollins. So then on the team, Cena. So Cena, Rock, Austin, and Macho Man would be my teams. For my top 5 favorite Survivor Series pay-per-view shows, again, a question I've answered before in years past, but this one kind of stays the same. I feel like this is a pretty consistent answer, regardless of the year. So in no particular order, the 2011 show I've always been partial to. I thought the environment that night in MSG was great. That had a lot of fun matches, fun main event with Rock returning to the ring. I've always really, really liked that show. The 02 one will always be my favorite. And the funny thing about that, though, and I've rewatched that show more than any other Survivor Series pay-per-view. The funny one about that is that I wasn't even watching WWE at that point. But that show is just so fucking good in terms of the execution, the matches, the moments. Everything about that show was fucking great. That was another MSG show, actually, too. First Elimination Chamber match. A lot of great stuff on that show. Big Show and Brock had a really fun, 4 or 5 minute match. The Dudley Boys reunion. The women's match was good. Just a great fucking show. I love rewatching that one. So, 02, 2011. The well runs dry beyond that. A 98, honestly. I really like the Deadly Games show. I feel like that's a fun one to rewatch. Even though there's no great matches on the show, just the overall overarching theme of the tournament and stuff was really, really good. So I never really throw the 90s pay-per-views in there, but I'd probably would include that one. 98, 02, 2011, 08, maybe 09, no, 2011 or 2010, no, 2012, no, 2013, it was awful. 2014, I love the main event. The actual show was whatever, but the main event was amazing. 2015 sucked. 2016 had its moments. I liked 2016, but it was kind of a mess. 2017, no. Maybe 2019. I think the 2019 was a lot of fun, so I would go 2019 I would include. 2020, no. 2021, no. 2022 I was there for, so maybe that one. I was there for 2021 as well. And then last year was also a good show. So I would say 98, 02, 2011, and then honestly probably 2022 and 2023. Because I don't know if any other show really comes close. 05 is also a fun one too, so I might say 05, but I haven't really gone back and rewatched it enough to say that one. 04 is also good, 03 is good, 01 is obviously good. But those are the ones that I'm partial to. So, again, I don't know. My answers constantly change. But I thought Survivor Series last year was good, and the year before was also good. So, hopefully this year is good, too. Hopefully this upcoming installment is good, too, to kind of keep that streak alive. Your next question. What are the best/worst WrestleMania theme songs? The best for me are My Way for WrestleMania 17, rather. Crack Addict, also by Limp Bizkit, for 19. Light It Up by Rev Theory for WrestleMania 24. Celebrate by Kid Rock for WrestleMania 30 and 34. The one at the top of my head that I hate is Welcome to My House for 32, as I felt that song feels bland. It felt bland for a big sporting event. What are some of your picks for the best and worst WrestleMania theme songs? Again, I've answered this a lot, but I'll answer it again because I love this question. I feel like 17 is the gold standard, My Way. I mean, you don't even have to like Limp Bizkit or whatever, or the song itself, but that is the most talked about Mania theme song of all time. So I feel like that's got to be on anyone's list. Written in the Stars for 30, or for 27 rather. The show was not good, but that theme song was great. And that's always been my number one. It might have been surpassed in recent years, but it's always been my number one personally. By Tiny Tempo, whatever the name of the artist was. That one was great. A lot of good ones. Home, I forgot the name of the band. Not Coming Home, or In My Bones. Bones, I think it was called. For 29 was another good one. Not my favorite, but it was a good one. I like the Kid Rock one, Celebrate, that you mentioned. Light It Up was probably my number 2. Light It Up for Mania 24 by Rev Theory was a great one. So many other good ones as well. I'm trying to think. Like Ladies and Gentlemen, Saliva for 23 was great. 25 had AC/DC was good. 26, another AC/DC song, but the Be Yourself song by Audio Slave was another really good song. 28 had good themes. I'm not a big fan of like the rap themes they use, but they really haven't used those for Mania. Like the Weeknd theme songs they've used for Mania in the last 4 or 5 years have gotten weaker. Like I think they've gotten weaker by the year, but they're all really good songs. I think the Blinding Lights one for Mania 36 was the best one. I thought that was a great Mania theme and one of the better ones in the last 10 years. 35, the song they used for that one, I think it was One Republic song. That was a really good song. I honestly can't tell you my least favorite just because I don't really remember them. It's usually like the secondary songs they've used for some of these Manias. The 31 one was great. That's also among my favorites. I forgot the name of the song or who it was by. It's something Garetta. I don't remember, but that song was great. What's it fucking called? The Flo Rida ones were actually pretty good too, I thought. The Welcome to My House one I enjoyed. They used them for 33 as well. I like that one. So, yeah, the ones I don't really like, I don't really remember because I don't listen to them, and I don't really remember what Mania they would have been used for, and I don't really remember them unless I go back and look it up. But, yeah, they've used a lot of good ones in the time that I've been a fan, in the last 15, 16 years, and those are among my favorites. Your next question here. Randy Orton has carved out quite a career in WWE, a career some within the company would not think that he would have even had with the family, or that he would even have with the family connections. He rubbed many people the wrong way, and many felt that he was a brash punk. Another thing many people felt that he lacked was that he wasn't tough enough to make it. He found success with Evolution, but some felt that he wasn't ready to take it to the next level. When I think of two notable rivalries that Orton has had that help him, I think of the Mick Foley one and the Undertaker one. Both gave Orton some of his best matches, particularly Foley at Backlash 04 with one of the best hardcore matches I have ever seen, and Taker at WrestleMania 21 with that awesome reverse RKO from the chokeslam. On a whole, though, which rivalry toughened up Randy and made him a big deal? The Foley feud from 03 to 04 or the Undertaker feud from 05? The Taker feud was great. You gotta go the Foley one. Like, it's not even close. Because Orton at that point was a glorified mid-carder, and he was doing well as a mid-carder, and he was having a fine run as Intercontinental Champion. But the Foley feud put him over. Like, it was that hardcore match specifically, some of the stuff they were doing up to that point that really and he himself has said that, Foley has said that too, so it's not just fans who say that. Orton has admitted that too. I mean, that match, that whole feud really proved that he could take it to the next level. And I honestly don't think it was much of a coincidence that within months of that match happening, he won the World Heavyweight title. Now, granted, it was short-lived, and they kind of botched the run, and it took him a long time to kind of bounce back from that. But I don't really think it was any coincidence that after that match, they saw him as a main event level performer. Again, the booking failed him, and the portrayal as a babyface and stuff like that, and didn't really work out initially. But that match really put him on that level. The Taker feud allowed him to bounce back from being booked poorly in that Triple H feud in late 04, early 05. I will say that. That Taker feud, because he wasn't really doing anything until the Taker feud happened. They turned him heel again. He lost to Taker, but they continued it months later, and they worked really well together. He beat him at SummerSlam. They had a great cell match at Armageddon, and they had some really, really fun matches over the course of 2005. So I would say the Foley feud toughened him up, but that Taker feud got him back on the main event track, leading into 06 with how much he benefited from that match. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine and on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland. Check out his content. He does great work. His first question was, a men's war game is a lock, but what were the chances that we get a women's edition as well? If so, who will participate in it? I fucking hope not. I hope not. This year, it makes absolutely no sense to do a women's War Games match, especially with Rhea Ripley getting her. There is no women's War Games match that makes sense for Survivor Series this year. Except, and here's the thing. I've seen people say that Ava's making an announcement tonight in NXT. It would be perfect. But the thing is, the 10-woman tag team match they're doing on NXT tonight should be Women's WarGames. So if Ava has an announcement, why would she book that 10-woman tag already for tonight's show? Let's say she comes out afterward and she said, "Oh, my announcement is that we're having Women's WarGames." But but they already booked the match for tonight. That's the part that doesn't make sense, and they already announced they're having an announcement. So that's what doesn't make sense to me. That aside, though, if they can figure that shit out, that is the match they should do for the women at WarGames. In WarGames, that Survivor Series. Because if it's not that, and they force one with like Liv, Raquel, and fucking like Pure Fusion Collect, like who gives a shit? Honestly, who fucking cares? And they could use like Raw and SmackDown women. That's not a WarGames match. That is an elimination match. There is no bad blood there. Even with Io and Liv now feuding over the Women's World Championship, and even Bianca and Jade now feuding with Liv and Raquel. That is not WarGames worthy. That is trash. That is just forcing it for the sake of forcing it. That is no different than when WWE would put matches inside the cell at the Hell in the Cell pay-per-view because it's October, we got to do it. It is literally no fucking different. So I hope they don't do that. The Bloodline match makes perfect sense. This year, more than any other year, a Women's WarGames match does not make sense. So please do not do it. But they probably will. And if they do, the NXT women's match makes the most sense. I just don't see them doing a Women's WarGames match, this great Women's WarGames match with women that are not on the main roster, that have nothing to do with the main roster whatsoever. That feud's not playing out on Raw and SmackDown. The main roster audience doesn't really know who a lot of these women are. I don't give a shit. I mean, that's the match to do inside WarGames. That's the match that makes the most sense. And if you're not going to do that, then don't do it at all. Your second question, who do you think will ultimately take the title off of Jon Moxley? God forbid it's Orange Cassidy, I say. If it's Orange Cassidy, I say. I don't think it's Cassidy. I think he gets the shot at Full Gear, but he loses. He should. He beat Moxley at Full Gear last year. Moxley gets his win back. Makes the most sense. I think it's going to be Darby Allin. That's what I was going to say earlier on in the episode, but I wanted to save it for here. I thought it would be Darby taking the belt off of Danielson, but they didn't want to do that. They went in a different direction, and that's okay. But I do think long term, they are building to Darby beating Moxley for that belt, which is why Darby lost to Moxley at Grand Slam, and they want to tell that story long term. So that's fine, but you got to make him feel ready for that spot. Like, if they put the belt on him at Wrestle Dream, that would have been too soon. I know Darby's been here for 5 years, but like, that moment would have been rushed. So in a way, I'm kind of glad that it wasn't Darby who beat Bryan. I would have rather Bryan won at Wrestle Dream, but that's just me. I didn't really want Moxley to be the one to beat him, but that was Bryan's say, so whatever. I think if they can elevate Darby and use this storyline to kind of build him up as the next big babyface on the show, then great. And I think that's where we're going. So I do think it'll be Darby. If it's not Darby, then I have no idea. Next question, also from John, non-wrestling related, but are you planning to see Wicked or Gladiator 2 in theaters in 2 weeks? I'm going to see both, not on the same day, because that would be close to 5.5 hours, he said, in the theater. And he also said, side note, I'm at 277 movies for 2024, so that whole 300 goal may need to go up. I think so. You were absolutely going to clear 300. I mean, it's only early November, so there's no way that you were not going to clear 300 before the end of the year. And then we'll talk about those movies and come the end of 2024, as we usually do, me and John, here on the channel. But yeah, of the two of them, I think I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm going to see either one of them. Wicked I might see just because it's a big deal, not because I'm necessarily excited for it. And Gladiator 2, possibly. Probably not, but there's a chance that I might, just because I might see it with other people that would be more interested in seeing it than I am. So, I don't know, we'll see. At Iwagu91 from Twitter, their first question was, even though she's out for an undisclosed period of time, do you think that Rhea Ripley will be the one to end Liv Morgan's women's world title reign? I do, and that's what I don't like about her getting injured, because it just prolongs this shit. Like, it's still hanging in the balance. And at this point, and we talked about it with Christopher's question earlier on in the episode, or a couple of weeks ago, rather, here on the show. If it was already losing steam, which is true, and I was fine with the feud even 2-3 weeks ago, it isn't. And I said, this is not a feud that you run through WrestleMania. It is not. Rhea getting hurt or not, I know she's already won the Rumble. I don't need to see that again, at least not right now. That does not interest me at all. I really do not care to see Rhea and Liv again, this time at WrestleMania. That is not a Mania match at this point. It could have been had you done their first match there or whatever, or the big blow-off there, had it not started already after Mania this year. But it's been going on for long enough. They've done all that they can do. Rhea being gone and then coming back to me won't really change my excitement level. I still will not care, but that's probably what they're going to do. So, yeah, I still think it will be Rhea beating Liv for that belt. I don't want to see it, but that's probably where we're going. Your next question. Do you see Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn feuding again due to the latter inevitably fully reconciling with Jimmy Uso and especially Roman Reigns? Yes, I think we will get another Sami Owens feud at some point over that. I think it's inevitable. Hopefully not soon, because we just saw them reunite like less than 2 years ago. So to have them feud again would just be overkill. But we haven't seen like Zayn as a babyface and Owens as the heel since they first feuded on the main roster in 2016. I mean, I know they feuded in like Ring of Honor and NXT, but like on the main roster, they haven't done that since 2016. A little bit in 2017, but Zayn went heel, so they never really fully feuded. But yes, I think that would make the most sense, just not anytime soon. Next question, also from @Iwagu91. Do you see Aussie Open feuding with each other or reuniting while Kyle Fletcher still pursues a singles career? I think Kyle Fletcher is going to be a singles star. They might reunite Aussie Open. I mean, they're a great team. I just feel like Kyle Fletcher, they've put so much stock in him, especially lately as a single star. How the fuck do you reunite these two? Unless the tag team is just an afterthought, but like to have them go after the tag titles would be a fucking waste. We just saw Fletcher and Ospreay unsuccessfully challenged for the tag titles at Grand Slam. So to do that again, but this time with Aussie Open, like no thanks. Maybe down the road, but not now. So, but the thing is that if you break them up, Fletcher has a much higher ceiling. Mark Davis is done. He's on fucking Rampage. He's going to be a jobber. He would be cooked at that point. So they kind of have to reunite them, but how often would they team is the question. I don't really care about Mark Davis on his own. Kyle Fletcher, they've made me care about. I think he's a breakout single star. Davis, he might join the Don Callis family, which is probably for the best, because if he doesn't, he's fucking cooked, like I said. At WheelJack83 from Twitter, he says, is it time to rethink the WWE draft in light of the few roster changes this year and people in the draft getting cut or not featured on TV? I mean, that concept has nothing to do with the draft. I mean, the fact that, like, for example, Tegan did not appear on TV before she got fired. Had she stayed on Raw, I mean, she would have been fired anyway. So, I mean, they draft people because the whole idea of the free agent thing is fucking stupid. I mean, they have brands, use the brands. It was the fine concept last year, but it was clear that they did the free agent thing last year because they didn't know what to do with those people. And surprise, surprise, almost every free agent from last year's draft in 2023 ended up getting fired anyway. Ali, Elias, Zion Quinn, Baron Corbin, Dolph Ziggler. Literally almost every single person. Von Wagner. Almost every free agent from last year's draft got cut anyway, at one point or another. Whether it be last year or this year, which is not a coincidence. But anyway, you can have your issues with the draft, and I think it's for the better, personally. Their execution of the draft needs to change. We said that earlier this year. But I don't really think the draft is an issue just because people aren't being featured on TV. I mean, you might be talking about the brand split, but if the brand split were to go away, I guarantee you people like Tegan Nox and Nakamura would still not be on TV. It actually makes it worse because you would be seeing the same people from Raw on SmackDown. And we're seeing that right now as part of the Bloodline stuff and other storylines. It would be even worse without a draft. It would basically be AEW, where Collision and Rampage mean nothing because you're just seeing the undercarders or not important people or whatever. So, no, I don't really think the draft has much to do with that at all. At BillMeister88 from Twitter, the first question was, he says, hi, Graham, is the Crown Jewel title the worst creation WWE has come up with since changing Sami Zayn's entrance music in 2021? The belt stays in Saudi, but next year, is it a triple threat? Because Triple H says the winner defends it. I'm confused. I don't think Triple H said that the winner defends it. I could be wrong. If he did say that, that would make no sense. I know the winners get a ring. They don't keep the belt, which is for the better, by the way. We don't need more belts on WWE TV. We don't need more belts in general in wrestling. That's just a fucking waste. So no, I don't think it would be a triple threat. It would just be whoever the World Heavyweight Champion is against whoever the WWE Champion is next year. I think it's as simple as that. So I don't think it's a triple threat, but I could be wrong. The whole concept sucks. Is it the worst thing since Sami Zayn's entrance music change in 2021? No, because I actually liked that theme. And they had to change from the song that he has now. They had to change from that because he was a heel, so it didn't really fit him as a heel, even though he had that fucking heel song for years. But yeah, no, it is what it is. It's funny that you mentioned that, but yeah, no, I don't think it's a triple threat, but the concept I don't really care about anyway. It's a stupid concept. Your second question, is it me or is the Wyatt Six being fumbled? I get the long-term storytelling with Miz, but are they on TV enough with the direction for people to really care? I want them to succeed, but I question if if WWE knows what they're doing. They're taking it too slow. I don't think they've been fumbled, not yet anyway. It's just that they are going at a snail's pace. They haven't had a match on TV in like 2 months. Like that's too long to me. Like this whole thing with Miz should have been sped up, happened sooner. They're taking their time with it. And they're not going to be wrestling every week, and that's fine. But after beating American Made like fucking 3 times, you would think that they could carry that momentum. The longer they go without having a match, they don't really have that momentum anymore. So that's kind of the problem. I'm not saying have them chase the tag titles, but they should be doing more. Like the Miz thing is interesting to me, but they're moving it at a snail's pace. They got to fucking pick up the pace here. So they're not being fumbled, but it is not ideal treatment of them. But also now at 2 hours, like it's even less time for them to be featured. So they got to figure something out there and not drag their feet with it, in my opinion. Third question from Bill here, and the last question for the show. Is it time that Shinsuke Nakamura leaves WWE? He's an amazing talent. He was at the live event shows in the UK recently, which I'm glad you had a good time at, Bill, because you mentioned that last week. But still no TV time. What is going on, and how do WWE fix it? Sorry, a lot of negative questions this week, LOL. I mean, a lot of realistic questions that need to be asked, so I don't mind if they're negative at all. But the Nakamura thing, honestly, I am shocked that he is still there. Gotta be honest. Like, there have been several periods since Triple H took over where he wasn't even on the show. Like, they first took him off the show. He was on the show initially when Triple H took over in 2022. He disappeared after November. He was gone for like 5 months. I don't think he was hurt. They just had nothing for him. So they brought him back last year. Didn't do a whole lot for a while. Turned heel, which was interesting. The Rollins feud was a lot of fun. I actually liked that feud, the matches. The Cody feud I liked, but he doesn't win whenever it matters most is the issue. So they were only really using him to put over Rollins and then Cody and just do jobs randomly after that. Lost to Sammy, lost to Dragunov, lost to Sheamus, all these other people. And he hasn't been on the show since fucking April. I mean, it's clear they have nothing for him. It's very obvious. And he's never going to be a world champion at this point. They could have put the belt on him with Rollins last year, had him lose have him beat Rollins and then lose it back to Rollins. They didn't do that. So that tells me that they don't see him as a main event guy. They don't see him as a world champion caliber competitor at this stage of his career. If Triple H was running things in 2016, 2017, then maybe then. Now, he's done. He's a mid-card guy, but he's not even on the show. He's not even on the show. Maybe he comes back on Friday and feuds with LA Knight over the United States Championship. I wouldn't mind that because I feel like that would be a fun feud. And I think they could work well together. But inevitably, when he loses that too, what do you do with the guy? He's been tag team champion a few times. He's been IC champion, US champion, Royal Rumble winner. Like, he's done it all, except win the world title, which is not going to happen. He's been a babyface a lot. He's been a heel a lot. There's really nothing more that you can do with him. So you either let him go, and if they're firing people, I feel like there could have been more done with Baron Corbin. I think Nakamura is really good. I'm not saying fire the guy, but it's just like with a guy like Baron Corbin, I'm not valuing Baron Corbin over Nakamura, but Corbin, it felt like there was more coming off his NXT run. There was more he could have done, and they let him go. With Nakamura, nothing against the guy, but there's not much more he can do. Like, I've said that with Asuka too, and I'm not trying to pick on the Japanese talent specifically. I'm not trying to be racist here, but at least with Asuka, you can have her work with other women, and there's only so much that she can do in the women's division. But even she's on TV more than Nakamura is. She gets hurt a lot. She's been hurt a few times, but she's on TV more than Nakamura is at this point. It's clear they don't see Nakamura as someone they can really use. I'm sure he doesn't give a fuck not getting booked. He's probably just sitting back, surfing and doing shit like that. But he probably doesn't care. If he really cared, he would have left by now. But it would be interesting to see him in a different setting, whether it be back in New Japan, which ain't going to happen because New Japan isn't even what it used to be. So would it even matter at that point? AEW would be interesting, but it's again, what are they going to do with him there? If anything, honestly, it would be fun to see him in a new environment, which is why I say maybe just put him back in NXT. He could still get fired anyway, like Corbin did in Dijak too, but At least NXT, he hasn't been there since 2017. 2017 or 2018? Yeah, 2017 was when he got called up. He hasn't been there in 7-8 years consistently. I would put him back there, honestly. Like, have him work with the people down in NXT, because otherwise, I don't know what the fuck you do with him on the main roster. Aside from feud with LA Knight, but like, we've already seen him and Cody a lot earlier this year. Don't want to see that again over the WWE title. Him and Roman isn't going to happen. Owens just went heel. Him and Orton, maybe, but like even then, Orton's got better things going on. So there really is not a significant, an obvious role for him on the show beyond just showing up and doing jobs. Honestly, put him in NXT or let him go. And I don't want to say fire the guy, but if he's still content, like, I guess let him sit there and collect a check, I suppose. But he ain't doing shit. I don't really know what you do with him, is my point. He's been there for so long, he's done it all, and there's no real obvious role for him. So I think anything at this point would be better than just sitting there and doing nothing. If he's collecting the check, I guess that's great. But if people want to see him do something more meaningful, to me, sitting on the sidelines obviously is not the answer. But that's going to do it for episode 571 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. You can send in the questions by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post. I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, folks. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Enjoy your week, and I'll catch your ass down the road.